The desolate hum of the asteroid drill was a familiar lullaby to Dr. Aris Thorne, a quantum physicist whose theories once graced galactic symposia, now reduced to coaxing minerals from forgotten celestial bodies. He piloted the deep space excavator, XM4 Prospector, through the inky blackness of the Kepler-196 system's outer belt, a lone speck charting the unknown, when his long-range scanners picked up an anomaly, not a mineral vein, but a pocket of unusual energy readings deep within the barren moon Xylos. This moon, dismissed by cartographers as inert rock, pulsed with a secret life, a secret that would soon hurl Aris into a conflict far grander and more terrifying than he could imagine, alongside a being whose very existence challenged the foundations of his understanding. For within Xylos, Lyra, a Harmonii in self-imposed exile from a collective consciousness that prized conformity above all, sensed the approaching violation, a tremor that threatened not just her sanctuary, but the dormant, ancient power that slept uneasily beneath its surface, a power coveted by a truth-suppressing regime known as the Chrono-Syndicate. The XM4's primary drill, a behemoth of tungsten carbide, bit into the gray, pockmarked crust of Xylos. Aris monitored the telemetry, his brow furrowed. The energy signature was tantalizingly close. His contract with AstroCorp was nearing its end, and this find could secure his independence, allow him to return to his true passions, pondering the universe's deeper questions, not just scraping its surface. He mused, is there a fundamental pattern to discovery, a cosmic breadcrumb trail leading us to things we're not meant to find, or perhaps things that are waiting? The drill whined, a higher pitch now, indicating denser material. Then a sudden drop in resistance, a cavity. The telemetry flashed red, containment breach imminent, the ship's AI intuned, its voice maddeningly calm. Before Aris could react, the XM4 shuddered violently. Alarms blared. The view screen moments before showing mundane rock now displayed a maelstrom of emerald light erupting from the borehole. He drilled into something vast, something artificial, and something decidedly sacred. Deep beneath the surface, in a cavern that shimmered with naturally occurring phosphorescent fungi, Lyra recoiled. The vibrations, the psychic scream of the violated stone, it was an agony. Her skin, normally a smooth, obsidian black, rippled, briefly taking on the rough texture of the cavern walls in a defensive reflex. The Harmonii, her people, had built this sanctuary millennia ago, a place of contemplation, a repository of their deepest secrets, shielded from the prying senses of the galaxy. She was its self-appointed guardian, a rogue element, a consciousness that had somehow diverged from the great Harmonii, their species' hive mind. The intruders were loud, clumsy, their thoughts a cacophony of greed and ignorance. She focused, trying to suppress the surge of what her culture deemed a dangerous weakness, anger. Stoicism was strength. Emotion was a flaw. Yet, a cold fury settled within her. They had disturbed not just her peace, but the sleepers. Aris wrestled with the controls. The XM4 was being pulled downwards towards the light. Reverse thrusters! Full power! He yelled, more to himself than the indifferent AI. The ship groaned, protesting the strain. Warning lights painted his face in stark, flashing reds. The precursor technology, whatever it was active, and it was hostile. Energy tendrils, green and crackling, lashed out from the borehole, wrapping around the XM4's landing struts. The ship tilted precariously. Aris caught a glimpse of movement within the emerald glow, a figure, tall and slender, impossibly graceful amidst the chaos. Its form was indistinct, shimmering, but it was undeniably organic. An alien. Lyra moved with a speed that belied her serene appearance. The sleepers, ancient defensive constructs of her ancestors, were awakening, their protocols recognizing the XM4 as a threat. She couldn't let them destroy the intruder outright. The resulting energy discharge would be catastrophic, potentially alerting forces across the sector to Xylos's location. She had to disable the ship, neutralize the threat, and seal the breach. Her people valued precision control. She extended a hand, and from her fingertips, small, obsidian shards, harder than diamond, formed and detached, shooting toward specific critical junctions on the mining vessel visible through the expanding fissure she aimed to cripple, not obliterate. She avoided looking directly at the cockpit, a gesture that, among her kind, would be an extreme act of aggression, or in other contexts, profound intimacy. The XM4's systems began to fail one by one. Power fluctuations, then main engine offline. Impact warning, the AI stated flatly. Aris braced himself. The ship crashed not with a cataclysmic explosion, but with a jarring, grinding halt, its hull screeching against the strange, crystalline structures that lined the enormous cavern it had fallen into. Dust and glowing particles filled the air. He was alive, shaken, but alive. Through the fractured viewport, amidst the settling debris and the fading emerald light of the precursor defenses, he saw her clearly for the first time. She stood a dozen meters away, bathed in the soft bioluminescence of the cavern. Tall, with skin like polished jet, her features were fine, almost sculpted, her large eyes a startling amethyst. Though she kept them averted from his general direction, focusing on the damaged ship itself. She wore simple, dark clothing that seemed to meld with her form. There was an undeniable aura of command about her, an alien queen in her subterranean palace. He felt a strange sense of calm descend. The philosopher in him intrigued despite the immediate danger. Fascinating, he whispered. A sentient species, here, of all places. Lyra observed the human. His thoughts, though less chaotic now, still buzzed with a strange mixture of fear analysis and an inappropriate curiosity. She could sense the lingering resonance of the precursor technology, still agitated. A section of the cavern roof, destabilized by the crash, groaned ominously. She needed to get him out, and then deal with the far greater threat of the awakened sleepers and the breach itself. She made a subtle gesture, a slight inclination of her head, towards a narrow passage leading deeper into the cavern system. It was the only viable escape route from the immediate vicinity of the unstable drill site. She didn't speak. The Harmonii language was a complex tapestry of thought forms, subtle pheromonal cues, and modulated subvocal harmonics not easily translatable for a species that relied on crude atmospheric vibrations for communication. Aris, interpreting the gesture as a clear, if silent instruction, unstrapped himself. His emergency kit was still secured. He grabbed it. "All right," he said, mostly to himself. When in a subterranean alien sanctuary, follow the tall, silent alien. He cautiously exited the XM4's emergency hatch. The air was cool, breathable, with a faint, loamy scent mixed with something metallic and ozone-like. The ground crunched under his boots. As he approached Lyra, he noticed the subtle shifts in her skin texture, a momentary hardening, like scales, as a piece of debris fell nearby, then smoothing out again. Limited shapeshifting. His physicist's mind cataloged the observation, even as his survival instincts screamed. He stopped a respectful distance from her. "Thank you," he tried, for not letting your defenses vaporize me." Lyra didn't acknowledge his words directly. Her attention was fixed on a distant hum that was growing louder. It was the sound of Chrono-Syndicate probes. She had felt their subtle touch on the periphery of Xylos' sensor net for weeks, a shadowy presence. The energy surge from the precursor activation must have been like a dinner bell. This complicated everything. The Syndicate. Masters of deception, hoarders of forbidden technology, ruthless in their pursuit of power. Their primary interest devices of creation, of control. The Heart of Xylos, the very thing her ancestors had built this sanctuary to protect, was a universal constructor, a device of mythic potential, and the Syndicate would tear Xylos apart to find it. The Heart was not just a machine, it was the repository of Harmonii history, their deepest cultural essence. And she, the outcast, was now its only immediate defender against both a clumsy miner and a galactic scourge. The hum intensified, accompanied by a faint, distorting shimmer in the air near the entrance of the cavern system they had just crashed into. "We need to move," Aris said, his voice low, recognizing the telltale signs of incoming vessels, though he couldn't identify their origin. Lyra finally met his gaze, or rather, her amethyst eyes flicked towards his face for a brief, intense second before darting away. In that fleeting connection, Aris felt a jolt, an unexpected depth of intellect, and an almost palpable wariness. It wasn't aggression, it felt more like a sizing up, a reluctant acceptance of a shared predicament. Then, with a swift, fluid motion, she turned and glided into the narrow passage. Aris hesitated for only a moment before following. The ground behind them began to tremble as the first Syndicate drop ship breached the outer layers of Xylos. The consequences of his accidental discovery were escalating with terrifying speed. His small mining operation had just become ground zero for a conflict that could engulf worlds. He hoped his philosophical leanings had prepared him for navigating a universe that had suddenly become infinitely more complex and dangerous. The passage was tight, claustrophobic after the immensity of the cavern. The bioluminescent fungi provided a dim, ethereal glow, casting long, dancing shadows. Lyra moved with an uncanny silence, her feet barely disturbing the loose scree. Aris, encumbered by his suit and gear, was considerably louder. He tried to ask questions. Who are you? What is this place? Those ships, who are they? Lyra remained silent, her focus absolute. Occasionally, her hand would brush against the tunnel wall, and Aris noticed her skin momentarily mimic its texture, a perfect camouflage. This wasn't just minor appendage shifting, it was a sophisticated biological adaptation. Suddenly, Lyra stopped. She held up a hand, palm out. Aris froze. Ahead, the tunnel opened into a slightly larger chamber, and in its center, a section of the floor had given way, creating a chasm perhaps 10 meters wide. On the far side, another passage continued, but blocking that passage were two figures in sleek black armor, their faces obscured by reflective visors. Chrono-Syndicate troopers. They hadn't seen them yet. Lyra's head tilted, a barely perceptible movement. Aris sensed more than heard, a low thrumming emanating from her. It was unlike anything he'd experienced, a vibration that seemed to resonate in his bones. The troopers on the other side of the chasm stiffened, then slowly turned, their movements becoming sluggish, uncoordinated. One of them raised a weapon, but fumbled with it, dropping it with a clatter. What did you do? Aris whispered, amazed. Lyra didn't answer but gestured for him to stay back. She then did something extraordinary. Taking a running leap, she launched herself across the chasm. It was too far for a normal jump. But midway, Aris saw her back ripple, and for a fraction of a second, two small, membranous wing-like appendages unfurled, catching the faint updraft from the chasm, giving her just enough lift and glide to reach the other side. She landed silently, the appendages retracting as smoothly as they had appeared. Before the disoriented troopers could fully recover, she moved. It wasn't a fight, it was a dismantling. Her movements were a blur of precision strikes to joints, nerve clusters, disabling them with cold efficiency. No wasted motion, no outward sign of exertion or emotion. When it was over, she beckoned Aris. He looked at the chasm. I don't have many wings. Lyra surveyed the gap, then the walls. Her gaze settled on a thick, vine-like growth clinging to the ceiling. She reached up, her fingers extending slightly, becoming sharper, and with a swift slash, severed a long section of the vine. She tested its strength, then expertly looped one end around a sturdy rock projection, tossing the other end to Aris. A makeshift rope. He caught it, impressed despite the ongoing weirdness of his situation. Resourceful. He commented, securing his end before swinging across, less gracefully than her leap, but effectively. As they hurried on, the sounds of distant explosions echoed from the direction of the main cavern. The Syndicate was likely engaging the precursor defenses, or perhaps each other. They are the Chrono-Syndicate. Lyra finally spoke, her voice a low, melodious contralto, perfectly understandable English, which surprised Aris. They consume truth, rewrite history. They seek control. Control of what? Aris asked, panning slightly. Off everything, Lyra stated, as if it were the most obvious thing in the universe. They believe this moon, Xylos, holds a key. The Heart of Xylos. A cultural artifact. Aris guessed. More, Lyra said, a flicker of something unreadable in her averted gaze. Universal constructor. A device that can shape reality from raw energy. My ancestors built it, and then, fearing its misuse, hid it, creating this sanctuary around its core, guarded by the sleepers and the very fabric of this place. Aris stumbled, his mind reeling. A universal constructor. The holy grail of physics, a theoretical impossibility made real. And you. Are you its guardian? I am separate. She said the words chosen carefully. The Harmonii exist as a great harmony, a collective consciousness. I emerged divergent, an anomaly. An exile, by their definition, though the choice to remain apart became my own. This place was my refuge, until you arrived. Her admission hung in the air. A rogue individual from a hive mind. A queen in exile indeed. The philosophical implications were staggering. What did it mean for an individual consciousness to cleave from a collective? Was she a new evolutionary step, or a flaw in the system? Aris found himself more intrigued than afraid. They emerged from the tunnels onto a high ledge overlooking a vast, subterranean jungle. Giant, glowing fungi towered like trees, their caps casting an eerie blue and purple light over strange, multi-limbed creatures that skittered through the undergrowth. In the distance, a colossal, crystalline structure pulsed with a soft, internal light, the Heart of Xylos, Aris presumed. It was breathtaking, but the beauty was marred by the signs of battle. Laser fire crisscrossed the cavern below. Syndicate drop ships were landing, disgorging troops. They're already here in force. Aris observed grimly. How do we even begin to stop them? Lyra surveyed the scene, her expression unreadable. The heart must not fall into their hands. Its power, twisted by their ideology, would create a galaxy of illusions, where descent is impossible, and free will is a forgotten myth. Suddenly, a Syndicate skimmer craft, sleek and black, detached from the main force and rode straight towards their ledge. "They've seen us?" Aris yelled. Before he could react, Lyra pushed him hard. He stumbled back away from the edge, just as a concentrated beam of energy slammed into the spot where he'd been standing, vaporizing rock. He looked up, expecting Lyra to have taken cover. Instead, she stood at the very edge of the precipice, directly in the path of the skimmer, which was now strafing them again. It seemed like a suicidal act. But then Aris saw it. Below their ledge, perhaps 50 feet down, was another, smaller platform where a group of silent creatures, small, furry bipeds with large, innocent eyes, had been caught in the open, cowering as the skimmer's fire rained down around them. They were clearly not combatants, just native fauna. Lyra wasn't drawing fire to herself to protect Aris. She was shielding these creatures. With a speed that defied belief, Lyra's arms shifted. Her skin hardened, taking on a metallic sheen, and broadened, forming two shield-like plates. She positioned herself, absorbing the brunt of the skimmer's next volley. The energy blast struck her makeshift shields with concussive force, sparks flying. Aris could see her stagger, could hear the hiss as her transformed skin superheated, but she held her ground. The skimmer, perhaps surprised by this unexpected resistance from a single individual, paused its attack. In that moment, Lyra did something that cemented a profound shift in Aris's perception of her. She subtly flexed one of her shield arms, and a concentrated sliver of the absorbed energy, now a piercing white, lanced out, striking the skimmer's primary engine nacelle. It wasn't a destructive blast, but a precise, disabling shot. The skimmer coughed black smoke, listed, and was forced to retreat. Lyra lowered her arms, her skin slowly returning to its normal obsidian hue, though Aris could see faint traces of heat shimmer rising from her. She swayed, a hand going to her side where some of the energy must have bled through. She glanced down at the small creatures, who, after a moment of stunned silence, chittered and quickly scurried into a nearby crevice. She had risked her life, endured significant pain, for complete strangers, for creatures that offered her no conceivable benefit. It was an act of pure, unadulterated selflessness, completely at odds with the stoic, emotionally detached persona she projected. Aris rushed to her side. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice filled with a concern that surprised even himself. Lyra flinched slightly at his proximity, her gaze still averted, but she didn't pull away. "Damage minimal," she managed, her breathing a little ragged. The energy dispersal was not optimal. "Minimal. You took direct fire from a military-grade weapon," Aris exclaimed. He gently reached for her arm, intending to check for burns, but stopped himself, remembering her aversion to touch and directness. "That was incredible. Why did you do that? For them?" Lyra was silent for a long moment, her gaze fixed on the spot where the creatures had vanished. "They are part of this place," she said finally, her voice softer than he'd heard it. "Innocent. The Syndicate's conflict is not theirs." It was the closest thing to an emotional admission he'd witnessed from her. This act, this raw bravery, shattered any remaining preconceptions Aris had. She wasn't just a cold, logical exile. Beneath the Harmonii conditioning, beneath the stoicism, there was a deep well of something akin to compassion. This was the turning point. He was no longer just a miner caught in a mess. He was with someone extraordinary, someone worth fighting alongside. The stakes had always been high, a universal constructor, a truth-suppressing regime, but now they felt personal. Her survival, and the preservation of whatever spark made her risk herself for others, suddenly mattered to him immensely. "We can't stay here," Aris said, his tone now firm with resolve. "They know we're on this ledge, and you're injured." Lyra nodded slowly. "There is an old transport hidden, deeper within the sanctuary. If we can reach it, we might be able to leave Xylos, to take the fight elsewhere. Or at least, draw the Syndicate away from the heart temporarily." "Lead the way," Aris said. "But lean on me if you need to. I might not have biological shields, but I'm sturdy." For the first time, a tiny, almost imperceptible upturn at the corner of Lyra's lips occurred. It wasn't a smile, not by human standards, but it was a definite shift from her usual impassivity. She didn't take his offered support, but her pace was slightly slower as they moved away from the ledge, and into another network of tunnels the sounds of the Syndicate's assault on the Heart of Xylos growing ever more intense behind them. They were now fugitives, united by circumstance and an alien act of selfless bravery, with the fate of a powerful artifact and perhaps the truth of the galaxy itself resting on their desperate flight. The hidden transport hangar was a relic of a bygone Harmonii era, carved deep within Xylos's bedrock. Dust lay thick on a sleek, dark vessel that looked more like a gracefully shaped obsidian shard than a starship. It was smaller than Aris expected, clearly not a warship, but elegant and functional. The Nightwing, Lyra said, her hand brushing its cool hull. A courier vessel, designed for speed and stealth. It hasn't flown in a long time. Well, let's hope its systems are more cooperative than the XM4s were, Aris muttered, already scanning its exterior for obvious damage. Does it even have power? Lyra placed her palm flat against a specific point on the hull. A low hum resonated from within the ship, and soft lights flickered to life along its fuselage and within the cockpit. It responds to Harmonii biosignatures. Pre-flight diagnostics are initiating. As they began the hurried process of preparing the Nightwing for launch, the forced proximity bred a new dynamic. Aris, with his engineering and physics background, quickly grasped the ship's advanced, yet intuitively designed systems. Lyra, despite her slight injury, directed him with quiet efficiency, her knowledge of the vessel absolute. They worked in tandem, sometimes brushing shoulders in the cramped cockpit, a contact that Lyra no longer flinched from, though she still meticulously avoided direct eye contact for more than a fleeting second. The Syndicate will have detected the power-up, Aris said, his fingers flying over a console, rerouting auxiliary power to the main drive. We don't have much time. Their primary focus remains the Heart's chamber. Lyra replied, her attention on the navigation system, but they will dispatch units to investigate any anomaly. As if on cue, a proximity alert chimed. Multiple contacts approaching fast, Aris reported, looking at the tactical display. Looks like more of those skimmers. The hangar doors are slow, Lyra stated. We may have to fight our way out. Her earlier exertion had clearly taken a toll. Aris saw the faint tremor in her hands as she configured the ship's minimal defensive systems. Let me handle the external sequences, he said. You focus on getting us airborne. He accessed the hangar door controls, simultaneously trying to bring the ship's particle beam emitters online. This was far beyond his pay grade as a miner, but his theoretical knowledge was surprisingly applicable. The massive stone doors of the hangar began to grind open, revealing the chaotic panorama of the subterranean jungle, now swarming with Syndicate patrols. Laser fire immediately stitched across the opening. Shields up, Aris yelled, though Lyra was already diverting power. The Nightwing shimmered as its energy shields absorbed the incoming blasts. Thrusters engaged, Lyra announced, her voice calm despite the barrage. The ship lifted smoothly from its cradle. The skimmers closed in. Aris, his earlier philosophical musings replaced by a primal need to survive and protect, found himself surprisingly adept at targeting. He wasn't a soldier, but he understood trajectories and energy yields. He managed to cripple one skimmer, sending it spiraling into a cluster of giant fungi. Their targeting is imprecise, Lyra commented, executing a sharp evasive maneuver that pressed Aris into his seat. They seem more intent on hurting us. Hurting us where? Away from the heart, Lyra mused. Perhaps their commander is more subtle than I anticipated. Or they believe we possess something else they want. They broke free of the subterranean cavern system, bursting into the thin, alien sky of Xylos. The stars were stark and brilliant against the black. But their escape was short-lived. A larger vessel, a Syndicate frigate, decloaked directly in their path. Well, that's not good, Aris said, his voice dry. It is a blockade runner. Lyra identified the frigate, fast, heavily armed. We cannot outrun it or outgun it in a direct confrontation. So, what's the plan, oh exiled queen of improvisation? Aris asked, a hint of desperate humor in his voice. Lyra's head tilted. There is a quantum singularity anomaly approximately 0.8 parsecs from Xylos, uncharted by most stellar cartographers. A graveyard of ships. The gravitational tides are extreme, navigation treacherous. The Syndicate will be hesitant to follow us there. A quantum singularity. Are you serious? That's not a hiding place, that's a death trap. For conventional navigation, yes, Lyra said. The Nightwing's drive can be tuned to ride the event horizon's temporal distortions, if piloted with extreme precision. It is a risk, but it is our only chance. Aris looked at her. Her amethyst eyes, though still not meeting his directly for long, held a steely resolve. He trusted her knowledge of her ship. More than that, after witnessing her selfless bravery, he found himself trusting her. All right, let's dance with a black hole then. What's the worst that could happen? Spaghettification? At least it's a memorable way to go. Lyra did not comment on his gallows humor, but a subtle change in her posture suggested she might have found it oddly reassuring. She expertly piloted the Nightwing, engines flaring as they streaked away from Xylos, the Syndicate frigate in hot pursuit, towards the terrifying, beautiful unknown of the singularity. The journey to the quantum singularity, designated QS-773, was a tense ballad of evasion and engineering. The Syndicate frigate relentlessly pursued them, launching fighters and firing warning shots that kept Aris and Lyra on constant alert. During brief lulls, they worked to optimize the Nightwing. Aris, drawing on his quantum physics expertise, helped Lyra fine-tune the ship's unique gravitic drive, preparing it for the insane stresses near the singularity. Lyra, in turn, explained more about the Harmonii and her estrangement. The Great Harmonii, she began, her voice a low murmur as she navigated through a dense asteroid field, using its clutter to temporarily shake their pursuers, believes individual deviance is a threat to communal stability. Emotions, strong personal desires, they are seen as potential fractures in the collective consciousness. I began to experience a vivid, independent thoughts. Questions the Harmonii could not, or would not, answer. Like what? Aris asked, genuinely curious while recalibrating the shield modulation. The nature of self, beyond the collective. The ethics of suppressing individual potential for the sake of perceived unity. The purpose of existence if all experiences are homogenized. Her amethyst eyes briefly met his, a spark of the rebellious intellect she usually kept veiled. The Harmonii offered integration. I chose exile. So, you're not just a queen in exile, you're a philosopher queen? Aris mused. We have more in common than I thought, though my exile was more about grant funding drying up for impractical, quantum theories. A faint, almost inaudible hum came from Lyra, a sound Aris was beginning to associate with amusement or interest. Your pursuit of abstract truths is not entirely dissimilar to the questions that led to my divergence. They shared their dwindling emergency rations nutrient paste for Aris, a small, crystalline lozenge that Lyra seemed to draw energy from for an extended period. The close confines of the cockpit forced a strange intimacy. He learned to read her subtle cues. The slight stiffening of her shoulders meant rising tension, a fractional tilt of her head indicated deep thought, and a rare, almost imperceptible softening around her eyes when she spoke of Xylos's natural beauty suggested a carefully guarded fondness. He, in turn, found himself explaining complex quantum states, using analogies of music and art, trying to bridge the gap between his science and her more holistic understanding of the universe. She listened intently, her unique biology, perhaps allowing her to grasp concepts in ways he couldn't imagine. He noticed how her skin would sometimes subtly shift in color, a faint iridescence appearing when she was concentrating deeply, or a deepening of its obsidian black when faced with a sudden threat. These were her tells, far more expressive than the stoic mask she usually wore. The cultural quirk regarding eye contact remained a delicate dance. Aris found himself consciously looking away when she turned to speak, a mark of respect he'd quickly adopted. Yet, in moments of extreme stress or shared triumph, like successfully navigating a treacherous debris field that shredded two of their pursuing Syndicate fighters, their eyes would meet, briefly, intensely. In those seconds, a universe of understanding seemed to pass between them, a raw connection that transcended words and cultural barriers. The romantic tension was an undercurrent, unspoken but palpable, built on shared danger, mutual respect for each other's intellect and courage, and the undeniable fascination of two vastly different beings finding common ground. As they neared QS-773, the fabric of spacetime itself began to distort. Stars warped and twisted on the viewscreen. The Nightwing groaned under tidal stresses. The Syndicate frigate is holding back, Aris noted, relief and trepidation warring within him. They're not foolish enough to follow us in here with their conventional drives. No, the true test begins, Lyra said, her hands moving with blurring speed over the controls. The event horizon's perimeter is unstable. We must find a stable path along the accretion disk's edge. What followed was the most terrifying and exhilarating piece of piloting Aris had ever witnessed. Lyra danced the Nightwing on the very cusp of oblivion. Time dilated and compressed. Strange, ethereal light patterns, the ghostly howls of trapped energies, played around them. Aris's physics knowledge provided crucial calculations for navigating the warp geometry, predicting gravitational shear points. Lyra's intuitive connection to her ship and her Harmonii senses, which seemed to perceive gravitic waves directly, allowed her to react with preternatural speed. Once a tendril of pure gravitic force reached for them. Lyra's skin rippled, taking on a crystalline structure that seemed to resonate with the ship's shields, deflecting the worst of it. Her minor appendages, small, almost invisible nubs along her forearms, extended slightly, glowing faintly, as if she were directly interfacing with the ship's energy matrix. "I'm detecting a stable pocket within the accretion disk," Aris announced after what felt like an eternity, his voice hoarse. "A small, relatively calm zone. We can shelter there, make repairs, and hopefully, they'll assume we were destroyed." Lyra expertly guided the Nightwing into the pocket, a small oasis of comparative sanity amidst the cosmic chaos. The ship settled, engines powering down with a sigh of relief. For a long moment they both sat in silence, the only sound their breathing and the distant, monstrous hum of the singularity. "We made it," Aris finally breathed out, a grin spreading across his face. He turned to Lyra, and this time, she met his gaze and held it. The usual Harmonii protocol seemed to shatter in the intensity of their shared survival. Her amethyst eyes, usually so guarded, were wide, luminous, reflecting the swirling nebulae of the accretion disk visible through the viewport. "We did," she confirmed, her voice barely a whisper. In that moment, surrounded by the raw, untamed power of the universe, the barriers between them felt paper-thin. He saw not an alien, but a courageous, intelligent, and incredibly resilient individual, and he suspected, hoped, she saw something more in him too than just a bumbling miner. The silence stretched, charged with unspoken emotions. He wanted to reach out, to touch her, but the memory of her cultural norms, her innate reserve, held him back. Yet, the air thrummed with a connection that was deeper than words, forged in the crucible of shared peril and dawning trust. The Heart of Xylos was still in danger, the Syndicate still a threat. But here, in the eye of a cosmic storm, something new and fragile was beginning to take root between them. The relative calm within the accretion disk pocket was a temporary reprieve. They spent 2 ship cycles making essential repairs. The Nightwing had taken a beating. Aris, surprisingly, found Harmonii technology intuitive once Lyra explained its foundational principles, which were less about brute force mechanics and more about resonant energy flows. Lyra, in turn, observed Aris as he worked, his brow furrowed in concentration, occasionally muttering quantum equations to himself. She saw the passion in his eyes when he spoke of the universe's mysteries, a stark contrast to the emotionless pragmatism her people valued. It was intriguing. During one repair sequence in a cramped access conduit, their hands brushed. A jolt, more than simple static, passed between them. Lyra's skin where he'd touched her momentarily shimmered with a faint, pearlescent light, a biological tell she couldn't suppress. Aris noticed. He said nothing, but his gaze softened. "The Syndicate will not give up on the Heart of Xylos." Lyra said one ship cycle, breaking a comfortable silence as they monitored long-range scans. "They will assume we perished, or they will blockade Xylos indefinitely. Either way, the heart remains vulnerable if they eventually breach the inner sanctum's defenses. So, hiding here isn't a long-term solution," Aris stated. "We need a plan. You said the heart is a universal constructor. What does that truly mean? Can it create defenses? Can it hide itself?" Lyra looked out at the swirling, lethal beauty of the singularity. "Its primary function is creation, yes. From raw energy, it can weave matter, complex technologies, even rudimentary life, given the correct schematics and intent. But it also amplifies the wielder's core nature. In the Syndicate's hands, it would be an engine of absolute tyranny. My ancestors, the first Harmonii, used it to seed life on barren worlds, to weave ecosystems. But they also saw its potential for corruption. That is why it was hidden, and its connection to your people. You said it was your cultural core. It holds the song of origin," Lyra explained, her voice taking on a reverent tone. "The complete history, the foundational consciousness patterns of the Harmonii. To lose it would be to lose ourselves, even for the great harmony. For me, as an individual, it is the last tangible link to who I am, where I came from, even if I stand apart from the collective." Aris understood. It wasn't just a machine. It was their soul. The stakes were immeasurable. "Is there any way to communicate with friendly forces?" Anyone who could help protect it. Lyra shook her head. The Harmonii isolationism is deep-rooted, and any other major power, if they knew of the heart's true nature, might become just as covetous as the Syndicate. She paused. There is one legend, a failsafe. The heart is not just passive. It is said to be drawn to or can be guided to places of profound natural energy, places where the veil between realities is thin. If it could be moved, or its signature masked by such a place. You're thinking of a new hiding spot? Aris asked. Or a place where its energies might be diffused, made less of a singular beacon? Lyra mused. There are legends among my divergent archives of the caverns of Lumina on the planetoid Crystallis. A vast, bioluminescent cave system, rich in unique energy crystals, said to distort sensor readings and even warp local space-time. Crystallis. Aris searched his limited galactic charts integrated into the Nightwing. Uninhabited. Volcanically active. Notorious for navigational hazards even without a singularity nearby. Sounds perfect for a clandestine rendezvous with a mythical artifact. A ghost of a smile touched Lyra's lips. The Syndicate's intelligence on such fringe locations is likely minimal. Their focus is on established power centers and known precursor sites. Their conversations deepened. Aris spoke of Earth, of humanity's own struggles with unity and division, of his dreams of a universe governed by understanding rather than conquest. Lyra slowly, painstakingly unveiled more of her inner world. She described the overwhelming, sometimes stifling, nature of the Harmonii collective, the loss of self she feared, and the quiet joy she found in the unique, chaotic beauty of the natural universe. A beauty the Harmonii often sought to sterilize and control. One evening, by the ship's internal chronometer, Lyra was tending to a persistent ache in her side, a lingering reminder of her encounter with the Syndicate skimmer. Aris approached, holding a medical scanner from his kit. May I? He asked quietly, his eyes deliberately focused on the scanner, not her face. She hesitated for a fraction of a second, then gave a curt nod. As he ran the scanner over her side, his fingers brushed her skin. This time, the pearlescent shimmer was more pronounced, spreading in soft waves. He could feel a subtle warmth radiating from her. There's some deep tissue damage, he said, his voice gentle. The energy blast, it wasn't fully dispersed. My medkit has a dermal regenerator, but I don't know if it's compatible with Harmonii physiology. My own regenerative abilities are slow. Lyra admitted, a rare confession of vulnerability. The initial transformation drew heavily on my reserves. Let me try this, Aris said, adjusting the regenerator to its lowest, broadest setting. It uses sonic pulses and bio-inductive fields. If you feel any discomfort, tell me immediately. He carefully applied the device. Lyra remained stoic, but Aris noticed the tension in her shoulders lessen almost imperceptibly. He worked in silence for a while, the only sound the soft hum of the regenerator. Thank you, Aris Thorne, she said, her voice very low when he was finished. She still didn't look at him directly, but her entire posture seemed softer, less guarded. You're welcome, Lyra, he replied, his voice equally quiet. He didn't move away immediately. The small space of the cockpit felt charged. He could smell the faint, unique scent of her skin, something like ozone and rare earth. He found himself wanting to understand every facet of her biology, her culture, the thoughts behind those incredible amethyst eyes. Aris. She began, then hesitated. The Harmonii, we are taught that emotional connection is a vulnerability, a path to chaos. And do you believe that? He asked softly, finally daring to let his gaze meet hers. Her eyes, when they connected with his, were like deep, luminous pools. The usual aversion was gone, replaced by a searching, questioning intensity. I am beginning to doubt many things I was taught. The distance between them seemed to vanish. He saw the pulse throbbing gently at the base of her throat. He saw the minute flare of her nostrils as she breathed. He saw the universe reflected in her eyes. Slowly, tentatively, he raised a hand, not to touch her face, but to hover near her cheek, a question in the gesture. She didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned into his proximity, a tiny, almost imperceptible movement, but it was enough. Her skin, where it almost brushed his fingers, seemed to warm, and a subtle, intricate pattern, like silver tracery, bloomed for a moment beneath its obsidian surface before fading. It was a biological response, involuntary, beautiful, and incredibly intimate. Lyra, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. He didn't kiss her, not in the human sense, but in that shared gaze, in that silent acknowledgement of the profound connection that had grown between them in the heart of danger and discovery. Something shifted irrevocably. They were no longer just allies of circumstance. Their fates, their very beings, were becoming intertwined. The fight for the Heart of Xylos was no longer just about saving an artifact or stopping a regime. It was about protecting the possibility of this unexpected, star-spanning union. They couldn't stay hidden in the Singularity's embrace forever. Their supplies were dwindling, and the Nightwing, while repaired, needed a proper maintenance facility. More importantly, the Chrono-Syndicate wouldn't remain idle. They will eventually conclude we are not in the Xylos system. Lyra reasoned, her gaze fixed on the swirling chaos outside the viewport. Their illusion-crafting technology is sophisticated. They can create false sensor readings, ghost signals. They may try to lure us out, or believe they have contained the threat, which gives us an opportunity. Aris picked up her train of thought. If they think we're dead or neutralized, they might lower their guard around potential secondary targets, or places like your caverns of Lumina. Precisely, Lyra agreed. Crystallis is several sectors away. The journey will be dangerous. The Syndicate has patrols and informants. But it is our best chance to secure the heart, or at least, to understand the legend of the failsafe. Their decision made, they prepared for departure. Aris plotted a course through lesser-known hyperspace lanes, routes that were slower but less likely to be monitored. Lyra fine-tuned the Nightwing's stealth systems, her fingers dancing over controls that now felt familiar to Aris as well. The bond between them had deepened into a quiet understanding. They anticipated each other's needs, finished each other's thoughts regarding ship operations, and moved around the confined space with an unconscious grace that spoke of growing comfort and trust. The journey to Crystallis was fraught with near misses. Once, they had to power down completely and drift through a dense nebula for 3 ship cycles to avoid a Syndicate destroyer that was systematically scanning for any unusual energy signatures. During that silent, cold drift, huddled together for warmth in the powered-down cockpit, the physical proximity became less a source of tension and more a quiet comfort. Lyra, in a moment of uncharacteristic openness, allowed her hand to rest near Aris's on the console. He gently covered her hand with his. Her skin was cool, but it warmed slowly under his touch, and he felt a faint, rhythmic pulse beneath his fingers, a Harmonii biological rhythm that was strangely soothing. No words were spoken, but the gesture was a profound affirmation of their connection. He learned that her limited shape-shifting wasn't just for camouflage or defense. Sometimes, when she was deeply contemplative or feeling a strong emotion she couldn't entirely suppress, the texture of her skin would subtly change, becoming smoother when calm, or minutely pebbled when anxious, almost like an emotional barometer he was slowly learning to read. Another time, they were forced to make an emergency landing on a barren ice moon to avoid a Syndicate patrol that had detected their hyperspace wake. The landing was rough, and the Nightwing's primary energon conduit fractured. Repairing it required an EVA in sub-zero temperatures and corrosive ice storms. Lyra, whose Harmonii physiology was more resilient to extreme cold, insisted on doing the primary external repair. Aris monitored her from the cockpit, his heart in his throat as he watched her expertly weld the conduit while buffeted by razor-sharp ice shards. Her form, silhouetted against the raging storm, was a study in courage and determination. When she returned, coated in frost but successful, he helped her out of the external interface suit, his hands lingering on her shoulders longer than strictly necessary. "You were incredible out there," he said, his voice filled with admiration. She met his gaze, a flicker of pride in her amethyst eyes. The task was necessary, but there was a warmth in her usually stoic expression that belied the simplicity of her words. That night, as the ice storm howled outside, and the repaired Nightwing slowly recharged, they talked about the future, a dangerous topic. "If we secure the heart, if we stop the Syndicate, what then?" Aris asked. Lyra was silent for a long time. "I do not know. My path diverged from the Harmonii. There is no returning to what I was, and Xylos, even if freed, may not be a sanctuary for me anymore." "Then we find a new path?" Aris said softly, turning to face her fully. Together, the word hung in the air, potent and full of promise. Lyra's gaze, for once, did not waver from his. It was a look of profound consideration, of weighing an utterly alien concept, a future intertwined with another, an individual from a different species, a different galaxy. Together, she repeated, the word tasting foreign yet compelling on her tongue. She then did something that stunned Aris. She reached out, her slender fingers lightly tracing the line of his jaw. Her touch was cool, yet it sent a shiver through him. Her skin where it met his seemed to soften to become almost velvety. Your species you feel so intensely. It is overwhelming, and yet, Aris prompted gently. It is not the weakness I was taught to believe it was. She finished, her eyes searching his. In you, Aris Thorne, it seems to be a strength. He leaned closer, and this time, there was no hesitation from either of them. Their lips met. Her kiss was like nothing he had ever experienced. It was tentative at first, a questioning exploration, then it deepened, infused with a sense of discovery, of centuries of Harmonii reserve melting away in the face of a connection that defied logic and culture. Her skin against his radiated a subtle energy, a faint thrumming that seemed to resonate with his own heartbeat. Minor appendages, so small they were almost imperceptible, might have brushed his cheek, not as tools or weapons, but as a sensory extension, experiencing this new, profound intimacy. It was a kiss that sealed their bond, a promise made in the frozen heart of a desolate moon, light years from where their journey began, a testament to an unexpected union forged across the stars. The Syndicate, however, was not entirely blind. As Aris and Lyra finally approached the Chrysalis system, they found their way blocked. Not by a massive fleet, but by something far more insidious, a sophisticated illusion. The entire system seemed to shimmer and distort, sensor readings becoming a chaotic mess of ghost signals and false positives. They know about Chrysalis, Aris said grimly. Or at least, they suspect something. This isn't a blockade, it's a sensory minefield. The Chrono-Syndicate excels in such deceptions, Lyra stated, her brow furrowed as she tried to penetrate the illusion with the Nightwing's advanced sensors. They are attempting to confuse and misdirect, to make us reveal our hand, or to trap us in a loop of false realities until their main fleet can arrive. Can you see through it? Lyra closed her eyes for a moment, her head tilted. Her skin took on a faint crystalline sheen. Their illusions are layered, complex, but they are based on predictable algorithms, designed to fool technological sensors and overwhelm organic minds with conflicting data. There are inconsistencies, patterns within the chaos. She opened her eyes, a new determination in them. I believe I can navigate us through, but it will require absolute trust in my guidance. The ship's sensors will be useless, even misleading. Aris didn't hesitate. I trust you, Lyra, entirely. What followed was a masterclass in intuitive piloting and sensory acuity. Lyra guided the Nightwing through a labyrinth of shimmering mirages and phantom obstacles. Sometimes Aris would see solid asteroids directly in their path on the main view screen, only for Lyra to fly them straight through, the images dissolving like smoke. Other times, seemingly empty space would conceal gravitic anomalies or energy traps that Lyra would deftly avoid, her only guide the subtle cues she perceived, cues invisible to Aris or the ship's instruments. He watched her, mesmerized by her focus, the way her body subtly swayed with the ship's movements, as if she were an extension of the Nightwing itself. Her limited shape-shifting seemed to play a role too. Occasionally, the tips of her fingers would flatten and spread against the control interface, as if increasing her tactile sensitivity to the ship's energy flows, or small, fin-like ridges would momentarily appear along her temples, perhaps enhancing her perception of the distorted space around them. They were making progress, slowly piercing the Syndicate's veil, when a new threat emerged. Multiple small, high-speed contacts. Aris reported, his own senses on high alert despite his trust in Lyra. Stealth fighters. They're not falling for the broad illusions. They're actively hunting within it. They are likely piloted by Syndicate infiltrators, psychically conditioned to resist their own side's gross deceptions and target genuine anomalies like us. Lyra explained, her voice tight. They will be harder to evade. The dogfight within the illusionary maze was unlike anything Aris had experienced. Enemy ships flickered in and out of perception, their attacks coming from unexpected angles. Lyra's piloting was breathtaking, a blend of Harmonii precision and a newfound, almost aggressive, determination. Aris, meanwhile, had to rely on her verbal cues and his own understanding of physics to anticipate enemy vectors and manage their dwindling shield energy. Aris, a fighter, is attempting a gravitic tether from port aft, masked by a false debris field. Lyra called out, her eyes darting across her specialized sensor, a ray that seemed to cut through some of the visual noise. Compensating, Aris rerouted power to the aft shields and fired a targeted particle burst based purely on her coordinates. A flare of energy in the phantom debris field confirmed his hit. They worked as one, a seamless fusion of Harmonii intuition and human analytical skill. The romantic connection they had forged now translated into an uncanny battlefield synergy. He anticipated her maneuvers, she trusted his tactical suggestions without question. During one particularly violent evasion, where Lyra had to spin the Nightwing through a collapsing tunnel of pure light conjured by the Syndicate, their hands accidentally clasped on the central console. It wasn't a romantic touch, but one of desperate, shared focus, a physical anchor in the disorienting chaos. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, a planetoid shimmered into view, solid and real amidst the dissipating illusions, crystallis. It was a stark, beautiful world, its surface scarred by ancient volcanic activity, but also gleaming with vast networks of faintly glowing crystals. "We're through," Aris breathed, a wave of exhaustion washing over him. "The caverns of Lumina await. The Syndicate will know their deception has failed," Lyra said, her gaze already scanning the planetoid surface. "They will converge on this position. We have little time." As the Nightwing descended towards the coordinates, Lyra had gleaned from the ancient Harmonii archives. A new message appeared on their comms. It wasn't from the Syndicate. It was a Harmonii collective signal, faint but unmistakable. "Lyra." A chorus of voices, serene and devoid of individual inflection, echoed in the cockpit. "The great Harmonii perceives your deviation. The heart of Xylos radiates instability. Return it. Return yourself. Reintegration will restore balance." Lyra stiffened. Aris saw a flicker of old pain, old conflict, in her eyes. "They're offering you a way out," Aris said quietly. "A way back." Lyra looked at him, and for the first time since their kiss, he saw uncertainty cloud her features. The pull of her people, of the collective she had been part of for so long, was still potent. "The Harmonii does not understand," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "They see only the pattern, not the individual threads. They cannot comprehend what the heart truly needs or what I have become." Before Aris could respond, a massive Syndicate dreadnought dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the crystallis system, far larger and more powerful than the frigate they had evaded earlier. Its weapons began to charge. "Decision time is over," Aris said grimly. "Looks like we're committed to your plan, Rogue Queen." Lyra's jaw tightened. The uncertainty vanished, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. "The caverns of Lumina are our only sanctuary now, and the Heart of Xylos will not be a tool for the Syndicate, nor a relic for a stagnant Harmonii." She expertly guided the Nightwing into a deep, narrow canyon, the entrance to the legendary caverns, just as the first salvo from the dreadnought seared the space where they had been moments before. The final confrontation was upon them. The caverns of Lumina were a breathtaking, otherworldly spectacle. Vast chambers opened before them, their walls, ceilings, and floors encrusted with colossal crystals that pulse with a soft internal light, cycling through 1,000 hues of blues, greens, and violets. The air hummed with a strange, resonant energy. Strange, delicate flora, also bioluminescent, grew in patches, casting ethereal shadows. Waterfalls of what looked like liquid light cascaded down crystalline cliffs into shimmering pools. But the beauty was deceptive. Unstable crystal formations hung like chandeliers, prone to shattering with the slightest vibration. Pockets of intense radiation and unpredictable gravitic distortions made navigation treacherous even on foot. "The energy here, it's incredible," Aris breathed, as they disembarked the Nightwing in a relatively stable grotto. "It feels alive." "It is why the legend spoke of this place," Lyra said, her senses already attuned to the cavern's unique emanations. The ambient energy fields could mask the heart's signature, or perhaps even interact with it. They hadn't brought the Heart of Xylos with them. It was far too large and dangerous to transport on the Nightwing. Their hope was that if this place was indeed a fail-safe, the heart still on Xylos might somehow react or reveal a path to its own salvation, guided by Lyra's presence here, or that they could find a way to use the cavern's energies to project a shielding effect across the vast distance. But the Syndicate was relentless. Sensors on the Nightwing picked up multiple drop ships descending into the canyon system. "They're deploying ground troops," Aris reported. "And I'm picking up energy signatures consistent with heavy drilling equipment. They're not just looking for us, they're planning to excavate something. They must believe the caverns themselves are a power source or a weapon," Lyra surmised. "Or their commander has a deeper understanding of the legends than we anticipated." A chilling voice, amplified and distorted, echoed through the caverns. Lyra of the Harmonii. Aris Thorne. Your futile resistance ends here. The executor has arrived. The Chrono-Syndicate will claim its prize. Surrender the location of the Heart of Xylos, or this entire planetoid will be sterilized. Aris recognized the title. Executor Vorlag, the Syndicate's most ruthless and effective commander, infamous for his brutal efficiency and his obsession with precursor artifacts. He's not bluffing, Aris said, his hand instinctively going to the energy pistol at his hip. We must reach the central chamber, Lyra urged. The nexus of light. If there is any truth to the failsafe legends, it will be there. Their journey through the caverns was a desperate race against time. Syndicate troopers, clad in black environmental suits, hunted them through the crystalline maze. Aris used his knowledge of physics to create diversions, triggering controlled crystal shatters with precisely aimed sonic pulses from his multi-tool, creating temporary light flares to blind pursuing units. Lyra, with her Harmonii agility and stealth, scouted ahead, her skin often mimicking the shimmering crystal walls, making her nearly invisible. Her minor shape-shifting proved invaluable, allowing her to create small, specialized tools from her fingertips to bypass Syndicate sensor nets, or to form hardened edges on her hands and feet for silent, disabling attacks when direct confrontation was unavoidable. They fought back-to-back in narrow passages, the air filled with the shriek of laser fire and the scent of ozone. Aris, no soldier, found a grim determination, protecting Lyra as fiercely as she protected him. Lyra, in turn, moved with a deadly grace, her Harmonii training, usually suppressed, now fully unleashed. She used the environment to her advantage, luring troopers onto unstable crystal bridges or into pockets of disorienting light. In one critical moment, as they were pinned down by heavy fire, Lyra made full, deliberate eye contact with Aris across the glittering expanse of a small chamber. It wasn't a challenge nor an accidental slip. It was a clear, unwavering look of trust, of partnership, of a bond forged in fire. Now, Aris, she yelled, and he, understanding her unspoken plan, detonated a series of pre-planted sonic charges, bringing down a section of the ceiling and blocking their pursuers, allowing them to escape. That shared glance, that moment of perfect synchronicity, under extreme duress, was more profound than any verbal declaration. They finally reached the nexus of light. It was a colossal geode-like cavern, the size of a stadium, its walls lined with perfectly formed, house-sized crystals that thrummed with immense power, their light almost blinding. In the center, a natural rock spire rose, and upon it, a series of ancient, eroded Harmonii glyphs glowed faintly. This is it. Lyra breathed, her hand instinctively going to her chest, as if feeling a distant echo. Suddenly Executor Vorlag, a towering figure in augmented power armor, stepped out from behind the spire, flanked by elite shock troopers. Impressive. Vorlag's synthesized voice boomed. You led us right to the control nexus for this entire energy system. Foolish. This place is not for you, Vorlag. Lyra stated, her voice cold and steady, stepping protectively in front of Aris. Everything is for the Syndicate, Harmonii. Vorlag sneered. The Heart of Xylos will be ours. And this planetoid with its unique energy matrix will serve as an excellent power conduit for it. Imagine a universal constructor, amplified by an entire world's energy. We will rewrite reality to our specifications. You will destroy yourselves and countless others. Aris countered, his mind racing for a solution. The energy in this chamber was immense, almost palpable. A small price for ultimate order, Vorlag dismissed. Now the heart. Tell me how to activate its transport sequence, or I will begin by dismantling your physicist friend, piece by piece. Lyra's form tensed. Her skin began to shimmer, not with light, but with a dangerous, dark energy. Small, sharp spurs emerged along her forearms. She was preparing for a fight to the death. But Aris had an idea, a wild, desperate gamble based on his understanding of quantum entanglement and resonance. Lyra, he said urgently, his voice low, the glyphs on the spire. Do they describe the energy-focusing properties of these crystals? Lyra, without taking her eyes off Vorlag, gave a curt nod. They speak of harmonic resonance, of amplifying and transmitting thought. Thought. Aris's eyes widened. Not just energy. Lyra, if the Heart of Xylos is truly connected to your people, to your consciousness, and if this place can amplify and transmit thought, you propose to use the nexus to call the heart. Lyra's voice held a note of dawning